Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices. They have air conditioned units starting at $2,800 with free delivery, installation, and Wi-Fi ready. We supply Pioneer, Lennox, Comfy, and Infinity, all at unbeatable prices. Servicing of a 12,000 BTU at only $150. Don't forget to check them out on Google, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So contact Darren's Air Conditioning Services at 749-8245. Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices.
Roger Garraway and his community of creatives present The Royal Exhibit, a 3-day art exhibition, Wednesday, April 27th to Friday, April 29th, Queens Park, Savannah. Daily start time, 11:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. under the auspices of the MP for St. Anne's East, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly. The greatest and finest pieces ever witnessed by local artists in Trinidad and Tobago will be on display for purchase. Come to this wonderful event and walk away owning a masterpiece that can be displayed in your home or passed down for generations to come. Roger Garraway has now made his mark on the international market, breaking barriers and setting the standard high. He and his group of friends will wow you with their out-of-this-world pieces. This event cannot be missed. You can also enjoy the opportunity to browse and purchase fantastic one-of-a-kind handmade art and craft pieces created by local designers from the community. Special guest appearances by Patrice Roberts, Michael Edwards and Friends, Iwer George, Roxanne Lane, Crazy, and Joey Rivers and his band. Food and drinks on sale. Secured parking for all vehicles and all COVID-19 protocols will be observed. Special thank you to the Member of Parliament for St. Anne's East, Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly.
Forged from the love of liberty in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare, side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea. This our native land, we pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation.
Live from the Progressive Empowerment Party's social space. This is the People's Platform. The economy is on the platform. Truth is on the platform. Now, the chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, Miss Felicia Holder.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the second installment of the People's Platform. I am Felicia Holder, chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, as well as your chair for this evening's discussion. Now, The People's Platform was created not only to discuss issues plaguing us as Trinbagonians and all of the madness that we face, but also to hear from some of the experts and leaders within the field. That's why today's topic, which is on the economy, the cost of living, well, the rising cost of living, and the impact on the hike in the fuel gas price, we're going to be hearing not only from PEP political leader Philip Edward Alexander, but we're also going to be hearing from economist and Professor Emeritus Patrick Watson. Before him, coming on, former Member of Parliament and Minister of Planning, Dr. Boo Tewari. It is my esteemed pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Professor Patrick Watson.
Very much, Felicia. It's my pleasure to be here. I am not sure. I think you told me 30 minutes, but I may go for less. And you stop me when you think it is necessary. I have been asked to speak a little bit about the economy. And of course, the news is not good. You know, we have been going through a fairly long period now, periods of fundamentally and largely negative growth. There has been a persistent decline in the foreign exchange, which is the lifeblood of the economy. I'll have a little bit more to say about this later on. And the absence of foreign exchange is really what is going to, I'm going to tie it in to the situation with the oil sector, with the rise in the removal of the subsidy and the rise in the price of gas at the pump. We all know that Trinidad and Tobago depends a lot on what happens in the oil sector. And that has been so even before I was born, and I'm now 70 years old. And in fact, strangely enough, I used to be hearing when I was in my mother's womb talk about diversification, and that has never really been put into effect. So one of the consequences of that is every time there's a problem in the oil sector, we have problems. When things are good in the oil sector, we have less problems. What has happened for the first time in my living memory anyway, we have seen a rise in the price of oil due to the very unfortunate circumstance of what is happening in Europe, in the Ukraine. And yet we are unable to benefit from it as we are accustomed doing. And indeed, what we are seeing, rather than what used to happen in the past when we would get the benefits from the price of oil, there is now a reduction in a benefit, which is the reduction in the subsidy, and it is something that many people find a little bit perplexing, and I will try to explain that in some very simple terms. Well, let me say right away what the problem is. Notwithstanding the rise in the price of oil and gas, what we have in our situation now is for the first time in my living memory, I have never seen the production of oil and so low, and gas. Oil is very low now. It's less than $60,000 barrels a day. In recent times, it used to be, when I say in the last 2 to 3 years, it would be well over 100,000. Not too much, but at the same time, 100,000 was a good target, and we are now very much below that. So that when there's a rise in the price of oil, we can't take advantage of it as we would like to, and the price of oil. And I think I should explain this because in discussion with some people earlier today, it appeared to me that there's some confusion about how this thing works. We earn our revenue largely from the sale of oil, crude oil, and gas. The gas, a lot of things are done with the gas at this juncture, but in the case of oil, it is largely the crude oil which is pumped directly into tankers for sale abroad. We ourselves use very little of our own crude oil production. Very little of it used to be refined at Petrotrin, and Petrotrin, in fact, was set up After the war, well, it was the Point Bay refinery. It was set up even before the war. And after the war, many other refineries existed throughout the Caribbean, including in countries where oil was not produced. Antigua, Barbados, even Suriname, Aruba, and all of these countries. But in recent times, from about the 80s anyway, a lot of them were shut down because the need for them by the United States market was now considerably less. But we remained with the oil refinery. We had two, in fact. Some of you are not old enough to remember the one that existed in Point Fortin, the Shell refinery. It was not always Shell, it was the UBOT and all these others. But we remained with the Texaco refinery, which is the one I knew. And even in my youth, people were calling for the refinery to be shut down as something that was quite a useless piece of activity. What happened over time is that the government, particularly the PNM government, because they were largely in charge for most of the period, they used it for their own political gains, and all kinds of I don't want to say necessarily corrupt, but certainly inefficient activities. Let me put it that way, which could include corruption, went on, and the refinery became a burden on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, causing us to incur a large debt, in particular following the WTI adventure of Malcolm Jones in the early 2000s. And something had to be done about PetroTrin. What the government chose to do, which I did not agree with, was to shut down the refinery entirely, to divide the operations into the producing operations, which are now done by Heritage, and then the PARIA, which is responsible for not refining, but the importation of oil already refined, which is the oil you get in your pump. Now remember that when that goes into the pump, we would have paid an international price for it. When the government fixes it at, let's say, $1 a liter, but it's paying $2 because $2 a liter, the government has to sponsor that additional dollar that you are not paying. And I remember when I was involved with the People's Partnership government, it was a very large, the subsidy was very large. My memory is telling me about $5 billion. And at the same time, the deficit, which the budget deficit, which is not ever a good thing, because what that does, it means that you are paying more for what we are getting, and we are going further and further into debt, and we have to pay more and more debt. That was less than the amount of the of the subsidy. When the oil price rises, as it has done in recent time, the subsidy rises simply because the price at the pump stays the same, except that now Mr. Imber has raised the price for the umpteenth time because we are riot yet. Those are his words. Those are the words he used. And it's simply because at this juncture, they cannot afford the subsidy anymore. So the war has had a rising an effect on the oil. It has raised the price, but we have not benefited. If anything, we have unbenefited because of the removal of the subsidy. And that is simply because the largest that we would normally get from high prices, we are not getting anymore because of the low production levels in the country. In the meanwhile, nothing is in place to replace oil and gas as a foreign exchange earner. I would want to insist that if we have no foreign exchange, nothing could happen in this country. Everything you see me, my glasses, my shirt, the shelf behind me, the machine I'm speaking to you on, all of that requires the use of foreign exchange. If we don't have foreign exchange, everything comes to a standstill, and the oil remains, notwithstanding it's falling from grace, it still remains the number one earner and the surest earner of foreign exchange. Oil and gas, when I say oil, I understand oil and gas. It remains the surest earner of foreign exchange in this country, but it is becoming less and less a useful earner of foreign exchange. So what is the happening? The government has removed. I want to speak a little bit about the impact of the removal subsidy. Let my position clear on this. I have always argued in favor of removal of the subsidy. My own view is that now is not the time to remove it, simply because of what has happened in the last 2 years and probably a little bit more, because of the impact of COVID and the negative impact it has had all around on the population. Removing the gas subsidy is going to impact negatively on those who benefit from it. All kinds of prices are going to rise. I gave an example earlier today about the watermelon that passes in my street. It passes in a truck. Watermelon is a fairly heavy product. And when they have to transport it, and part of the cost you pay, part of the retail price you pay for the watermelon has to do with the cost of transportation. If that goes up, and of course, when I say watermelon, that's just one product. All the products that is going to happen too. Everything is going to rise, and of course, when my cost rises, I will then try to charge you for my services. Tonight it's free, but tomorrow I may have to charge for it, given that I have to pay more for gas and so on. And it's something that is going to multiply its way through the economy, so that I saw a joke a few years ago about doubles being raised, the doubles man raising its price because the price of that's when Imbe first removed. I think it's the first round of removal of the subsidy, and there was this meme on Facebook saying, what are you using to make it doubles, diesel or what? As if, because diesel is not a direct input into the production of doubles, a lot of people feel that the price should not rise. And of course, that is not true at all. The doubles man has to transport his product to the nearest location where he can sell. He, of course, has to send his children to school in the same one, will be facing the all-round costs increases, and has to find a way of steadying his income or even improving his income. So it's going to affect all of us at a time when we should be protected from that kind of thing. And at the moments when we could have done better, when we didn't really need to have that subsidized, we kept it going because it was politically astute to do so. In fact, I have a photograph of a PNM rally. I think this was in 2010, where they are saying, do not let them get in power because they will remove the subsidy. And now the PNM, of course, is removing the subsidy precisely at that time. And indeed, I was involved in the 2010 People's Partnership at that. And I argued for the removal, or the beginning of the removal of the subsidy at that time, when it would have made sense. But now, in the height of it, when we are accustomed to it, it's very, very difficult to remove it, and it is likely to cause a lot of trouble. I'm going to tie this up as I come to an end on the discussion with the general impact on not just the removal of the subsidy, but the overall impact of COVID and what people are calling supply chain blockages and so on, that is impacting the rate of that these things are impacting the rate of inflation the world over. Up until last year, even around this time last year, inflation was not, even with COVID running for a year, it was not yet a bother, but it was already threatening to be a bother, given the fact that once the COVID pandemic eased up, all the pent-up spending that was not taking place in the big countries in particular was going to be released. There was going to be the shortages could have already been predicted because the supply shortages were there. And now there are even greater supply shortages, including in the agriculture sector, because of what is happening in the Ukraine. You know that the Ukraine and Russia are the two world's largest producers of wheat, so that we are anticipating rises in the price of a basic commodity, which is bread. And all of these things are going to affect us. So far in Trinidad and Tobago, the impact has not been marked, but it's coming. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's on the rise. There are rises in the price of goods, and it's going to get much more acute in the coming weeks because of what has, even if the war comes to an end now, even if the war comes to an end now, because of what has already happened, we are going to be facing these problems. The removal of the subsidy, of course, adds to this problem in the case of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me, however, say some of the why I argued in the past for the removal of the subsidy and why I think the subsidy should be removed, although a better time could have been chosen. When you subsidize a resource like fuel, what you do is you encourage misuse. That's the first thing. People use their motor cars where they shouldn't. People spend money easily on gasoline, and it's a scarce resource that we should really be trying to hold on to. But more important than than that is that you don't there's a damage to the environment that is done because of the misuse of gasoline. There are so many cars in Trinidad and Tobago and in the rest of the world. There's pollution. We have promised to lower our footprint based on the Paris Accords, and it's not an easy matter. But perhaps the most important point, the biggest beneficiaries of a fuel subsidy are those who can afford things that run on fuel, and those are the well off. And from that point of view, even the middle classes like myself, we benefit from it in a way that others do not. And is it that what you want to do? Do you want to benefit those companies that these big transportation companies, those big quarrying companies, and so on, because they pay the same at the pump like you and me. They spend a lot of money on it, but it's a lot of subsidized amounts, and that is not what I think is the best use of our resources. Now, try and understand how this is subsidized. The money largely comes from what we earn from the sale of gas and oil abroad. That money does not come directly to us because the producer of the gas, the main producer of the gas and oil is BP. And for all practical purposes, you can say BP is the only producer of gas and oil. And if you think of it like that, that does not hurt you in the analysis. It is when BP pays its taxes based on what it sells on gas and oil. It is then we benefit from the bonanza, the oil bonanza. And that money is the source of things that the government can do, pay CPEP, pay the gas subsidy, and so on. If this is not working, then the gas subsidy, the oil subsidy, fuel subsidy is going to have to disappear because, and with the recent increases, notwithstanding what we knew in the year 2000 or around there, what we knew in the 1970s and in the early 2000s, we are not going to be witnessing that at all so a lot of the things that we use, that we finance with it, which may have been used politically to gain political benefits, such as providing make work employment like CPEP, a lot of this is now under threat because the oil and the gas are not dealing with us as it used to, even in the face of relatively high prices. And the price rose to about 140 a few weeks ago. It's now kind of dancing around 100, but that is a very high price because up until 6 months ago, it was fighting to cross 60. and now it's up in the up in the hundreds. Of course, when it's 100, it's better for us than when it's 60, but it's not much better if we, instead of producing 100,000 barrels, we only producing 60,000 and even less. So the question has to be asked: where do we go from here? And if we miss the boat for diversification, and I'm going to tell you the complications that are going to result from trying to diversify at this point in time, the second best time is now. And we have to find some products, some services that will help us to earn foreign exchange. And I myself have a lot of problems trying to identify what these can be. I don't think that it is a wise thing. Sometimes these things come up and they are a result of entrepreneurial activity. And in fact, what I think should happen, and some of the studies we did at the University of the West Indies help us to, if you wish, to make this conclusion that we should be trying to encourage entrepreneurial activity. Now, let me say what this is. Entrepreneurial activity is not cheap. You ask Elon Musk, who only today or yesterday purchased Twitter for the measly sum of 44 billion US dollars. And of course, he will tell you that if you have never failed, you haven't tried. And that's the one or two successes they may have is something that follows up on thousands of failures. So entrepreneurial activity is costly. In the case of Trinidad and Tobago, it's costly in foreign exchange because a lot of the things that you may wish to try may require foreign inputs. You think about it, there's hardly anything that we can do in Trinidad and Tobago that does not require foreign inputs. The manufacturing sector that we have, and again, I want to bring this to your attention, which is the strongest in the English-speaking Caribbean, and which is a reasonable earner of foreign exchange, though at this point in time, probably not a net earner. In fact, I'm quite sure it's not a net earner, but it does earn foreign exchange. When you go to Barbados, you see Carib being sold, notwithstanding the existence of banks. Where I have even seen Carib in the French-speaking countries. It's very, very popular in Guadeloupe, for instance. And the fact is, though, that all of these products, including the Carib and so on, require foreign inputs, which very often, the cost of which often exceed the value that we get from the sale of it locally and in terms of foreign exchange, locally and internationally. Entrepreneurship then is going to be costly in foreign exchange, and we may wish to think of how we're going to use what we have. Now, what has been happening is the foreign exchange has been dwindling. You may not, I see some businessmen, I wonder if you know that they think foreign exchange grows on trees. We want the foreign exchange, why didn't you give us the foreign exchange? It does. I think the government is correct to keep a regulatory hand on the amount of foreign exchange because it is not, it's dwindling because we are taking away from it much more than we are adding to it, simply because the price of oil first has been unfavorable, and now the quantity is unfavorable. So what we have is a wearing away of the whittling away of the foreign exchange. As you very well know, if you try to get foreign exchange for travel, it's very, very difficult to get that. And yet here I am, and I think the government has understood this. They are being required and asked to encourage entrepreneurial activity by making foreign exchange available to entrepreneurs. Now, this is the worst time that you could do that kind of thing, in the sense that the risk you have is very high, and you know that the foreign exchange is not coming. So with the chances of failure, you are likely to you're likely to lose a lot of foreign exchange before you could gain any. And you may even reach a point, we hope not, that you can no longer afford to use the foreign exchange on things that are of uncertain uh, of an uncertain result, in the sense that it will not result in you. Now, remember, we have had years to get ready for this. We have had periods, had large amounts of foreign exchange. We did not accumulate it. In fact, I keep reminding people the Manning administration refused to create that what is now called the Heritage and Civilization Fund. And the first time that happened was with the Pandey administration in the following 1995, when they introduced something called the Interim Revenue Stabilization Act, or something like that, which was eventually concretized into the Heritage and Civilization Fund when Manning returned to power following the election, the very contestable elections of 2002. And even then, not much was added to it. If you look at the equivalent of the Heritage and Civilization Fund in Norway, they have so much money inside of there that if everything should stop working in Norway, they have enough money to last them a couple of years. Just from that. And you should go on. I used to have the figures on my fingertips, but I don't anymore. It's called a sovereign wealth fund. Norway is, of course, a oil producing country, and they have saved a lot of money into their equivalent of the heritage and civil, which is not our case. We have not been adding to it. And in fact, in recent times, a large chunk has been lost. And a lot of it has been lost not because the government has drawn down. How this works is that it's managed by the central bank, and the central bank invests the funds in foreign assets. But these assets have not been doing very well of late. I'm telling you, I own a few stocks and shares, and I hate to go and look to see what is happening to it, because every day I go, there's a decline. There's a decline. I thought I was doing very well. No, I'm not doing very well at all. Well, it's the same thing that is happening to the fund, and of course the government is drawing down little by little from it, and more importantly, they are not putting anything into it. It's the management of the fund and the astute investments by the central bank. The central bank is the manager of the fund that keeps it going. But little by little, we are losing even the foreign exchange that is in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and the oil sector, well, the energy sector, is not adding to it. So we are in for a rough ride ahead of us. We are threatened with inflation. We are threatened with unemployment because the oil sector, which is the one that is used to push the economy, is not working. Diversification is non-existent, and I am now saying that we should emphasize it. And I have pointed out to you the difficulties that we are likely to face in doing so, and that those difficulties are related to the shortage of foreign exchange. So it's not a pretty picture, and I don't know what is going to happen. In the old days, we could have said a war would help us. A war is clearly a serious war is on the horizon. In fact, it's going on, and it could be, and it's not helping us. It's not helping us at all. Quite to the contrary, you've seen that we saw the prices rise, and we have had to pay more at the pump, which seems to be a contradiction, which seems to be ironic. But I explained to you why that has happened. Felicia, I'm going to stop there, and I don't know if any questions will be asked at any point in time, so please take back the reins.
Thank you, Professor Watson. There are economists and then there are economists. I don't think anybody is ever able to break down the way the Trinidad and Tobago works as clearly and as succinctly as Professor Watson. He gave us some very daunting news, but we knew it, but he actually broke it down for us as Trinbagonians in little bite-sized pieces that we could understand. I myself was very enlightened by what he delivered tonight. And following on from that, we have Dr. Bo Tuwari, former Member of Parliament and Minister of Planning, who's also going to give his take on the economy, the hike in the gas price, and the cost, well, the impact on the cost of living for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So, without further ado, Dr. Bo Tuwari.
Thank you, Madam Chair Felicia. And thank you very much for giving the opportunity to share my thoughts with those who are watching and taking in this particular program and presentation. Dr. Watson, my good friend and colleague, mentioned the war in Ukraine. And because of that war in Ukraine, we have come to know and appreciate a person who a few years ago was a comedian, but who is now the president of that country. And we have had an opportunity in this situation of crisis to assess what a formidable person that former comedian is. We have seen him as a representative of what you might call a profile in courage. When young Kennedy was president of the United States in the early 1960s, they had written a book about him called Profile in Courage, and we've seen that same thing in Zelensky, Vladimir Zelensky, which is that he is a living profile in courage. We have also seen him as a leader, the kind of leader he is, how he engages his people, how he engages the issues, how he functions under pressure. And we've seen something of a different kind of leadership. But the most important thing that we have seen in him as a leader, and we have seen it too in the people of Ukraine, is their notion, their concept, and their belief in national sovereignty. That is to say, they are part of the world, yes. They are part of the entire group of countries that make up the world system. They are part of Europe. They are on the border of Russia. But there is a sense of identity of Ukraine as a place of value to the people who live there and who were born there. And that sense of national sovereignty is so strong that it allows them to summon the will to fight at a time when they are really overwhelmed by a world superpower which has military might that the Ukrainians cannot even begin to approach now, even with all the help that they are getting. That may improve, but that is how it is. But Vladimir Zelensky is facing an invasion and a war. We in Trinidad and Tobago, here in our little but gorgeously beautiful islands state, beautiful Tobago, beautiful Trinidad, 5 beautiful islands down the islands off the coast of Chaguaramas, 7 islands in all. We are facing a national crisis. And there are many dimensions to that national crisis, but I think we can agree that one of the dimensions is economic. The second dimension is politics or political. The third dimension is the governance culture, which we have to live with and which causes so much dismay. And the fourth element is the society itself, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, in their many varieties and structured as they are in this country, everywhere in the land, rural and urban and everything in between. This society is almost on the verge of unraveling. So let us deal with the economic side of the crisis, because that is the focus tonight. And I would say that the economic side of the crisis is really captured in three separate things. One is at the most simple level, where we have a problem with income, and Patrick Watson was very, very clear on that, saying what had happened with the oil. Even with the high price, we have a production problem, and therefore we have a problem with income. The second issue is expenditure. The third issue related with that, when you have a problem of income and you cannot contain the expenditure, is that you live on deficits. And what that means is that for some years now and continuing, and the challenge is getting greater, we have found it impossible to live within our means. In other words, we are earning X and we are spending 2X. And we have a problem every year with income and expenditure. The second issue in the economy is the structure of production, but also the structure of exports. When Dr. Watson was talking about oil and the diversification, he was really talking about the extent to which we were trapped in oil and energy as our only exports. And we have a problem of production, which is that the only thing we are producing is oil and gas. And then we have built some industries on the gas side. So the structure of production and the structure of exports determine two things for us. They determine our dependency on oil and gas and therefore energy, and they determine the balance of trade and the balance of payments, which means how much foreign exchange we have to spend to survive and to sustain ourselves, and how much foreign exchange we are able to win for ourselves by the things that we sell to the world. And I think both Patrick and I think the whole nation would agree that this dependence on energy has become a very, very serious problem now in this age of crisis for the world and for Trinidad and Tobago. The third issue that we have are the increasing debt obligations on our ability to repay, given that we have a shrinking economy. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but the GDP has fallen by 1/5, the per capita income by 1/4, and basically the country is living above its means with a GDP that is 3/4 of what it was. A GDP that is 4/5 of what it was, and a per capita income across the board of 3/4 of what it was. Now, what is the central problem? And Patrick said it, Dr. Watson said it. He said if a country doesn't have foreign exchange, which is its lifeblood, it can't buy anything. And he talked about the fact of his glasses, his shirt, and so on, everything, because there's such a high import content in everything. So our central problem now, with the state of the economy living above our means, with the debt obligations and servicing that, and with the limited unchanging structure of production, is that we have a serious foreign exchange problem. The second problem that we have is food. I don't know how many people saw the World Bank warning about 3 or 4 days ago that we are going to have a world food shortage crisis. Now, this is something we have been telling the government for since COVID came. We said that there are 2 things that we must do, which is that we must cut down the imports and produce as much food as possible in Trinidad and Tobago. The farmers said that, ordinary people said that, political people said that, sensible people said that, but I have not seen any action that will lead to progress in food production. Another central problem that we have, so we're going to have a food problem, is the viability of Trinidad and Tobago as a commercial and human enterprise. If you don't have foreign exchange to support the businesses and the inputs into businesses that you have to keep the economy going, it means that you are not going to have open businesses to employ your people, and their human enterprise is threatened. It makes little sense for the graduates coming out of the tertiary system because there are no jobs for them to get. So that the central problem of this foreign exchange, this food shortage, the lack of production in food, is also the viability of Trinidad and Tobago as a commercial and human enterprise. And we are not seeing any action that would give us jobs, that would give us income, that would give us some economic recovery from the COVID debacle. We are not seeing any growth except the growth that comes out of the price of oil and natural gas, which is really an income growth. It is not a production growth. It's a production, it's a price growth, price escalation in one commodity that allows you to see something positive. But there is no action really for economic growth in the economy. And of course, without jobs, income, recovery, and growth, you won't have any circulation or increase of circulation of money from productive endeavor. And you can't just print money and share it out. And you can't expect the underground economy of drugs and everything else to fill the breach for an economy that is not just declining but shrinking. And the other issue we have to understand in all of that is the structure of business ownership. We have government that is heavily involved in business, that is true, with all the state enterprises that it owns. But the way the business is structured in this country, you have the multinationals, then you have the big conglomerates, and basically you have, besides the multinationals, you have other foreign investors here, then you have the big conglomerates, then you have the businesses that have gotten pretty big on retail, etc., and enjoy a kind of monopoly. And below that, you have a range of small and medium businesses, generally family owned. And below that, you have a lot of micro enterprises, people trying to use their entrepreneurial skills and their business know-how and their will and energy to make a living rather than look for a job. Now, what is the problem of foreign exchange? Well, we are not earning enough. And the second thing is that the price of the TT dollar makes our economy uncompetitive, which means to say that if you had a bigger gap between how many dollars it took to buy a US dollar in Trinidad and Tobago, the chances are you would be able to sell more goods abroad because you'd be more export competitive. And that means if the price of the dollar makes us uncompetitive, that one of the things to do is to adjust the rate or to devalue. In fact, the IMF does not say that you should devalue, but it tells you that your dollar is overpriced. But why can't we devalue now? We cannot devalue now for the same reason that Patrick said, which is that this is about the worst time ever. You have a war going on that is basically crippling the global economy, that has sent energy prices sky high. You had COVID before that created all these structural problems in the economy, in which all these logistical problems and so on, where you could not supply goods and transport them effectively to all the places that you needed to. But more than that, COVID created a production problem, as indeed the war is creating now. So that besides just the logistical problems of supply and the chain of distribution, etc., you also have a production problem which is real. And you have an additional problem now together with all of these, which is that China is having a serious COVID problem. And they are going to lock down more and more parts of the country, and that will lock down more and more businesses. And that means a global supplier, the largest one, is really going to be out of commission for some time. So, because of the global pandemic crisis and all of these things that I mentioned, from the war, the logistical problems, the COVID crisis in China, the transportation problems, the logistical problems, everything is up. But salaries are stuck. Everything has gone up. You have a world inflation. And I agree with Patrick, the inflation hasn't hit Trinidad and Tobago fully yet. The prices are going up and people are catching hell and they're having a hard time. But it's going to get worse. So the salaries are stuck. Everything is up. The economic disparities are more pronounced now than ever. There is an increase in poverty. There's an increase in poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, quite significant, really, as people have lost their jobs, people have lost their incomes, people have lost control of their families because of the problems of closure of school and the impossibility of working and looking after your children and all of these difficulties. And so there's an increase in poverty. People are losing control of their financial and economic lives. And everyone has a leverage in the society except those on a fixed income. It is important to understand that. If you don't have income, either you're not working or you're dirt poor, you have absolutely no leverage. If you have income which is stuck not going up as everything else is going up around you, and you can't do anything else, you are really in a position in which you can't leverage anything. So inflation is getting out of control in the world. Inflation is getting out of control in Trinidad and Tobago. It's going to get worse. Food inflation is what drives everything here. And if, as I argued before, and I think Patrick would agree with me, that devaluation is not something that we should do at this time, it goes without saying that raising the fuel prices at this time does not make any sense at all. It is the worst time to raise it when people are losing control of their families, their children, and their children's education, putting food on the table, basically eking out a living. Now, that is the bad side, and the question is, can we do anything about it? Because when you take these overwhelming problems and you put them together, I think that is what has the government in this crippled state, in which it cannot do anything about anything except those things that either favor political support or patronage, or those things that favor friends of the regime. And the question is, what is the minimum that we can do now, and what would be the value of that, and what would be the likely consequences? I think that the first thing we have to understand is that we cannot allow people to go hungry in Trinidad and Tobago and die on the street or in their homes, or on the basis of not having anything to eat. So the hunger issue is a serious issue. The second thing is that we need to begin to plant food in an organized, orchestrated fashion as never before, so that we use the opportunity to produce more of what we consume. And thirdly, it seems to me that we have to reduce the number of things that we import and the extent of money that we spend on imports, by increasing food production, reducing food imports, but also by looking at the issue of import substitution. Now, Patrick would disagree with me on this because we have talked before about it. He thinks that there is very little room for import substitution, but I would say we start with agriculture and try to produce as much food as we can. We link it to agro-processing, we link it to agro-exports. We do whatever we can to increase production there. That will also create jobs. And part of the job creation could also be absorption of some of the Venezuelan immigrants. And the second thing, in the value chain of all of our industries, especially in the manufacturing sector, and especially in export production in the manufacturing sector, if we look at the value chain and see what we could do to import substitute, I think that would be valuable. And the second thing related to import substitution and export production is to attract investment for such businesses in order to accelerate the diversification process and the foreign exchange savings and earnings process. The third thing that I would do is that I would talk to the IMF, and I would talk to all the banks with whom we have debt, whether it's CAF, whether it's World Bank, whether it's IDB, CDB. I would also talk to the rating agencies and get a holistic perspective, with them engaging each other and engaging us, as to what would be our options for creating better fiscal space, better policy space, uh, uh, a clear national agenda, and a national understanding and consensus behind the agenda. Now, we don't need to talk to the IMF and the World Bank and the IDB and so on and the rating agencies to develop our national agenda. What we need to do is to design and develop our national agenda for ourselves. And once we engage them as to where we are headed, what we are seeking to do, how we want to do it, we talk to them about the financial situation globally, the space we have, the fiscal issues, etc. And on the basis of that, we buy some time and some space and give ourselves a chance to do some policy making and some action here in Trinidad and Tobago that can get the entire country behind a full agenda. I will go very quickly now because I am close to the half an hour time that I was given. There are other things that I would do. I would address the oil, gas, renewables, energy transformation issue and our future as part of a long-term plan for that, and create a job creation strategy for the transformation of the energy sector as we move more and more away from fossil fuels. I think that we should engage investors abroad. We have some very interesting investments here. I don't know how many people know that we actually have a robotics company in Trinidad and Tobago that is well connected with other partner companies in the USA and Europe and providing a significant portion of high quality services from Trinidad and Tobago, a small company with about 20 university graduates from the University of the West Indies, UTT, and some graduates of foreign universities who are Trinidadians who are here. So we need to talk to investors abroad and talk to those people who are connected abroad in our own economy, and some of them are doing well, and look at how we can make the connectivity with the Internet of Things, robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and now the metaverse. Because we have got to create industries that we have not even thought of here in Trinidad and Tobago to connect with where the world economy is going. Because after the dust has settled, regardless of what crises we still have to go through, the issue is going to be geopolitical power and global competitiveness. Those are going to be the issues for any country that wants to survive. And we've got to then rethink what we do with our workers or industry competitiveness in self-sufficiency, etc. So, for instance, we have a large tertiary graduate pool that is now migrating, most of them to Canada. What do we do with these people? Couldn't that form a base out that could be an attractor to industry here, a pool of people who are highly educated, which is how the robotics industry came here. Because it came here because they could get ready-made graduates out of the university who either knew already or could learn fast in order to get into that industry. So we need to begin to make that kind of movement. We need to move towards greater self-sufficiency. That is the name of the game in the world now. Everybody is looking to neighborhood collaboration and production. Nobody wants everything to come from China anymore or the Far East. because there are too many problems with that. So we should ourselves be building a neighborhood strategy with CARICOM in a serious way, in a strategic way, in an enlightened discussion manner. We should be talking with Colombia, with whom we trade, Dominican Republic. We should be talking with Central American countries. In all of this, we should take advantage of the Venezuelan presence here in order to build industries that can be Spanish speaking, like tourism from Spanish speaking country, or that uses the skills of these people in any migrant community based on the literature that we have surveyed. And I just wrote a book together with 3 other people on that. The migration process is one that enhances fiscal benefits in your country, that enhances trade benefits to your country, and that enhances entrepreneurial and investment benefits to your country. So we need to do that, and we've got to finally, as we are doing this, restructure the entire economy and the way we deploy our funding and deploy our private sector to build businesses that are aligned to where the world is going and where Trinidad and Tobago needs to go. Finally, I will close on this issue, which is the equity and equality question is a big issue in Trinidad and Tobago. It is a big issue in the world. It will become a bigger issue in the world after the war. So there is a democracy question. There is an equity and equality question, and there is the global positioning question that Trinidad and Tobago must answer in this very, very transforming and uncertain world that we have. And I would say Trinidad and Tobago needs to shift from how it has been operating. We need a stakeholder democracy here. We need to be talking to people all the time and building consensus so that we can govern this country in a way in which the people and those who are elected are partners. We need shared prosperity here. You cannot have this wide disparity. You cannot have large numbers of people who own nothing and who have no stake in the economy. And those who have everything cannot protect themselves in a society of such broad and wide and deep divisions. So for the sake of harmony, we need to have shared prosperity. And there are ways of doing that. We need to change the relationship between leaders and led. We cannot continue like this. The existing political parties that are dominant are like a cone. You have a leader at the top and you have a handful of hangers on to the leader at the very top, and all you have is space down below and the people outside the cone, totally outside. And by changing the relationship between leaders and led, you will create the trust that will give us unity of purpose, and in order to build social capital too, which is necessary to do anything. And if I had to do something tomorrow to get the economy started, I would do 4 things immediately. Agriculture, 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 food production, together with reduction of food imports, housing and construction, in order to get the private sector to drive in the country, digitalization here for the world that we are going to enter after the war, and export investment in Trinidad and Tobago from everywhere, in existing manufacturing, in new areas, with inputs from people all over the world, foreign investment from all over the world, that would also take us to the higher levels that I mentioned of internet, AI, robotics, etc. begin to do these things in a serious way, tapping into the number of graduates that we have now, as I said, who are leaving the country. So not only are we in a situation where our foreign exchange is dwindling and our debt is increasing, but our human capital is also leaving. So it is not only about money, it is about intellectual capital and human capital, and our society is disintegrating, unraveling. So the social capital that you need to make a country cohere and be successful is also going. So we've got to intervene now. So I close by saying that this is not the right time for a hike in fuel prices. It will increase the price of everything at a time when the world price of everything has already been increasing and will continue to increase for some time. The central banks of the world are trying very hard to contain this inflation, and everybody feeling it. Receiver countries we are going to have a very hard impact in Trinidad and Tobago. People are already talking about it. I feel mistimed this thing and made a mistake. But the reason for that is because they have done so little over the last 7 years, is that every problem bunched up at once and they ran out of options. And what is happening to Trinidad and Tobago as well is that in seeing no solutions from the government and the major political players on the landscape, what is happening is that the country has a feeling deep down inside, the citizenry, that we too are running out of options. And that is a dangerous place to be. And we must do what we can to build the capacities necessary in order to bring hope and eventually good governance and transformation to Trinidad and Tobago, which, as I said, is a gloriously beautiful country. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and for listening to me.
Now, on the People's Platform, the chairman of the Progressive Empowerment Party, Miss Felicia Holder.
And thank you, Dr. Botawari, for that very informative session. I mean, we heard it all: inflation, decreased oil production, falling prices in terms of how we sell our oil, diversification or lack of diversification for that matter. I said at the beginning of the show that we're using this platform not only to discuss the issues, but to hear from some of the experts and leaders on some of the solutions. Since I'm a child, I've been hearing about our need to diversify away from oil and gas. Professor Watson explained that even though we're experiencing a boom right now, it's still not making a dent. We are not feeling it as a boom right now. In fact, it's the complete opposite. We are facing higher prices as citizens of this country. We are experiencing a lack of leadership. We have no idea where we're going as a country. We've been talking diversification, we've been talking agriculture, but it's still not happening. And while we heard from these experts and leaders from a very professional level, I want to bring it back to the ground level, because yes, we've been enlightened this evening about the way the country is working, or rather not working. But what does that mean for us average citizens? It means that the price of our dollar, it's falling. It means that we can get less things. The same $100 that could have gotten you 15 items, you could probably only get 8 now. And that's what we experience. That's what we have experienced as a country. And it's only been made worse by the pandemic. Yet we're looking towards the future, but we're not sure what we're looking towards. We still haven't diversified the economy. While oil and gas is still king, there are other ways. Dr. Tiwari just listed a few of ways that we could advance this country. So we're asking ourselves, why aren't our leaders doing this? Why isn't anybody from a leadership level, the government level, why aren't they talking these kind of solutions? We, the everyday citizens, yes, this is all economics and politics, but on the ground here for us, it is impacting us at a great rate. We are literally having to sacrifice one thing for the other. I saw a paper, a member of parliament today saying that parents have to choose over educating their child or buying food, and that is a reality. Parents now have to choose between which child am I sending to school, which one might have better potential, and that should never be the reality in a country as rich as Trinidad and Tobago. We heard of our history tonight, and the fact that we as a nation have not built on that history, we have not improved ourselves, we haven't rised to the leadership level that we once enjoyed as a Caribbean island. Now we have our neighbors in the Caribbean shooting way past ahead of us. Guyana, that we laughed at, Guyana is now set to become the kingpin of the Caribbean. Barbados is a shining jewel in the Caribbean. We talk tourism here and we treat it like a bastard child. There are nations in the islands within the Caribbean that operate on tourism alone. So why is it that we here Trinidad and Tobago so blessed with natural resources, so blessed with natural attractions? Why are we doing so poorly? Yes, there's a war. Yes, our oil output is not as it used to be. But where is the leadership? Where are the people to put solutions forward? It's literally like we're watching a train coming at us full speed ahead and doing nothing about it. That's what it feels like living in this country, seeing a train coming towards you for the past 20-something years plus, and seeing that you can stop it, seeing where you can literally divert that train off of its course, but nobody is doing anything to stop it. The fact that we had such a very knowledgeable panel tonight, I'd like to thank Professor Watson and Dr. Botiwari for bringing their perspective on the state of the nation, on the state of the economy, and putting forward solutions that I hope leaders are listening to. But if they aren't, we definitely know what we would plan to and would like to do should we be given the reins of office. People in this nation, they need clear, sober leadership. And I would like to thank again the panelists tonight who brought their level of expertise towards leading and managing Trinidad and Tobago. At this point in time, I would like to invite or bring up our next speaker, our final speaker, our closing speaker for tonight, PEP political leader Philip Edward Alexander. Welcome.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago and the wider world and everyone who's watching us. Good evening to the crew that makes these shows. This is the second of the People's Platform series. It is our intention to run this series right up until an election is called. We intend to get the best and the brightest minds to come and speak to you on issues from a position that makes it easy to understand. I want to thank Felicia Holder and her team who puts this together every week. I want to thank Satish Ramsaran, David Welch, and the rest of the technical staff that makes this miracle and magic happen. Listening to both Professor Watson and Dr. Botiwari, was very illuminating tonight. I like that Professor Watson put so easily into understanding why there is an issue with the subsidy now. The issue I want to raise. And listening to him speak, I regretted that we weren't in a panel, because I would have asked him, why did they do a subsidy in the first place? Why was our economy built on lies? I had to make an analogy earlier to say, you built your house with 6 steps up to get into the house. The steps are an integral part of the house. And if you had to, at some point, lose those steps, getting into the house would be difficult. So you needed to make sure that when you were designing and building your house, the integral steps were not going to be something that could have been taken away or lost at some point. It seems that the subsidy created a fake economy. I have asked for decades, why is our dollar so weak? When they say that we were the 3rd wealthiest nation in the Western world, I asked a question. We were wealthier than everybody besides America and Canada. We were wealthier than Brazil and Argentina and Venezuela and Cuba and Barbados and Guyana and Suriname and Chile and Nicaragua and all of the other countries that make up the Americas, Central and South America. We were wealthier than Mexico. Trinidad and Tobago was massively wealthy. My question has always been, how could you be that wealthy as a country and your people be that poor? We have had more symptoms of hateful, violent poverty than any other country I know. I watched Rwanda go through the madness of the Hutu-Tutsi massacre and in quick time become one of the top 3 tourist destinations in the world. Colombia, that was notorious for drugs and cocaine, is now a massive building economy prior to COVID-19 and another of the largest tourist destinations in the world. When Dr. Bo Tiwari and Professor Watson spoke and skirted the issue of diversification, why was our economy not built on multiples of pillars from the start? Why were we given a subsidy when what we should have been given is a real economy with a real cost of living to the average person, so that we would know that for the units of work that we exchange every day, the labor we exchange for money every day, that money would have a value that you could predict. In Trinidad and Tobago, the average person, and I'm talking even what we call middle class people, wake up every day and hustle. Nobody is living a plan. We have ideas, we have goals, we have intentions, and if things swing our way today and every today, because it's not predictable, then it could look like we're doing something. Everybody who starts off at some point chasing money. I want money, I want a car, I want nice things. You meet somebody, you end up in a relationship, boom, you have a couple kids, and your intentions change from now just wanting nice things to wanting to make sure that you have nice things that you can leave for your children and that they're safe when you shuffle off this mortal coil. But all of those intentions are not easily materialized in a country where today a bank was named the best bank in Trinidad and Tobago for 2022. And I asked, how could you be the best of 4 of the worst things in this country? Banks in Trinidad and Tobago do not protect, provide, engage, develop. Banks in Trinidad and Tobago are places where you put your money because more and more law and government force you to put your money there, and your money is there, and while it is there, people with education and knowledge of finance come up with more and more ways to erode your money and steal your balance. And I wonder, how could we be living in a country that was the 3rd wealthiest nation in the Western world, and it be so easy for that to be a reality in Trinidad and Tobago, that banks could be the opposite of helping the country develop. When I hear Mia Mottley use our policy to speak to her banks, I'm proud of her, because she should. Because everybody should have access to sensible decision making when you're in leadership, to the benefit of all the people in the country. Now, I know tonight's show is about the economy, it's about cost of living, it's about the impact of the subsidy on the country. I'm going to segue a little bit, because in response to the school violence, our Prime Minister said that we are a violent people. And today, people send me everything. People send me everything. I get everything. And today, people sent me some teenage girls in a school environment, in a classroom, engaged in a fight. And I'm watching this fight. I don't normally pay attention to these things, but I'm watching the anger in this fight. And it made me realize, and I want to answer the Prime Minister, that we are not a violent people, but the children are angry. The children are angry because, as Singing Sandra said, and I play this song every day, children through life keep on drifting. Is something they're smoking or sniffing, or maybe they're trying to forget this life of misery and regret. No one to come to their rescue except Capleton and Buju. So their boom boxes, their Lego, to escape crying in the ghetto. And I want to say to the Prime Minister, you have the job. You can't throw it back on me because I talk about it, or anybody else. I don't give a damn about Kamla Persad-Bissessar. I don't care about her. I don't care about the UNC. I don't care what they say. But I have to care about you. I have to care about what comes out of your mouth. And for too many times, rubbish comes out of your mouth. So these children who are holding an empty bag for a future and a rotten present, they have no hope. And it is too easy in this country to set the people on each other. When we have floods like we had today, people make every single excuse that they could find to blame other people, when the people to blame have always been the government. Flooding and water supply are twinned. In a country like Trinidad and Tobago, we have a rainforest climate for 6 months out of the year. Today alone, hundreds of millions of gallons of water fell on this country. Today alone, and yesterday too, the Diego Martin River alone, this is the one I want to talk about, filled to the brim. And the 70,000 people that live on either side of that river, that water filled to the brim in the Diego Martin River today. If we were holding that water, instead of washing it out to sea, would have given the 70,000 people who live on either side of that river more water than they could have used for this entire year. possibly for the next 2 years. It's a massive amount of water. And the Diego Martin River, from start to end, holds more water than many of our reservoirs. And we have many rivers like the Diego Martin River. And the people in Maraval, 35,000 people, have the Maraval River. And the people in Cascade, St. Anne's, Belmont, Port of Spain have what starts off as Port of Spain, St. Anne's River that ends up as the East Dry River. Those rivers, just those, the Chaguaramas River, those rivers, Tucker Valley, hold so much water. That water generates so much energy that could power pumps for free. And take that water and put it anywhere you want it to be. I hear Trinidadians talk about rubbish in the drains and rubbish in the drains causing flood. That is nonsense. That is stupidness from politicians who don't understand how it works. When you see all that rubbish floating in the flood, all that means is that we're nasty. Trinidadians stink. Let's take that for granted. We stink and nasty. But David Welch, our youth arm chair, went to, what is it called now, Nelson Mandela Park, and filmed. All of the bins were full to overflowing, and all were surrounded by full garbage bags, and those full garbage bags were surrounded by piles of rubbish. Now people will see that rubbish and say, take your rubbish with you when you're going. But they don't see what they do with their own rubbish. I'm not saying throw it on the ground. But I'm saying that we pay taxes for the proper removal of garbage. Garbage ends up in the river, in Maraval, because from the people from Paramin go back, there is nowhere for them to put their garbage. Not everybody in Trinidad lives the West Moorings life. Not everybody in Trinidad could walk out on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and rest their garbage down and a truck will pass. Not everybody has that luxury. The country doesn't. So when people say that is rubbish that causing the flood, I would like to rubbish that. If it is not clogging or blocking any waterways, it's not contributing to the flood. And you're seeing it floating on top, it stink, we nasty. We stupid. Our parliament, I have told them for years, if you put a simple 25 cents tax, charge it to Blue Waters, charge it to Coca-Cola and Solo and SM Jalil, charge it to every company importing single-use plastics or manufacturing in Trinidad and Tobago single-use plastics. Put a 25 cents redemption. Charge it to the manufacturer. Take it from them at the manufacture stage. Take it from the importers at the import stage. So you have the money. Take that money to clean up after them. Pay that 25 cents back to people who bring those plastic bottles back to redemption centers. The landfill in Trinidad will drop 10 feet in a month because people will go and dig out all the plastic bottles they could find. They will pick the rivers clean. I remember when Carib at a time used to pay people a redemption on their bottles. If you stop to drink a beer by Smokey and Bunty in St. James, a vagrant will lime around you and he measuring your bottle and waiting for you to rest it down so he could pick it up. And that's a simple solution to a massive problem. But it's too easy for us to pretend that Blue Waters and SM Jalil bottles floating in the water causing the flood. It's not. We're nasty, we stink, we're stupid. We vote people into parliament who don't understand or who may be taking financial donations, campaign donations from the companies that I am naming, so they wouldn't put a beverage bottle tax in place. But a beverage bottle tax in place will not only clean up after Blue Waters, and I keep saying Blue Waters because 90% of the bottles in the water is a testimony to the success of Blue Waters, but Blue Waters or anybody who is in single-serve plastics should be cleaning up after themselves. Not only will it clean that, it will put money in the hands of unemployable people. Right now, the same vagrants, homeless, indigent that we speak about, those people could generate income on a massive scale for themselves. You just gave them hope and opportunity in the garbage they live in. That solves two problems. If we capture whole, treat our water We solve flooding. If we hold it and treat it and distribute it, we solve the lack of water in the taps. People will have water 24/7. The space under the water tanks and the pumps could now become a kitchen garden and grow saive and charabeni and bygone for your family to use. Or you could build a spare room for your grandparents. We spend millions of dollars in this country running pumps to run stored water in tanks because we can't understand that the nation state of Trinidad and Tobago floods because we don't know how to follow water to where it collects and sink retention ponds right there. And sink retention ponds to the size and the capacity based on what the Met Office tells you will fall on St. Anne's. They know. They could tell you what fell on St. Anne's in the last 100 years. So you could take a snapshot average. And if they said this falls at any given time, these are the peak months, this is the largest amount that has ever fallen on St. Anne's. Build a retention pond for that amount. The water that is in there could generate the energy to pump it out itself. But you don't even need to do that. There is technology as old as the Romans and the Mesopotamians and the Persians and the Babylonians. I've been talking that for years. And I guarantee Trinidad and Tobago, I guarantee you, elect us to office, we will shut down the desalination companies. There is nothing more foolish, more stupid, more idiotic than us spending $500 million a year at DesalCort to buy desalinated salt water when we created that salt water when we threw the rainwater in the sea. We cannot continue to run the country. And again, that solves two problems. If you visit www.21policies.com right now, and you read all of those policies, that's our 21 policies. We launched that in 2017. And you ask yourself, if those were policies since then, what this country would be today. Trinidad doesn't have to be broke. Dr. Tiwari and Professor Watson talk about the end of King Oil. We've had our time. We've had our booms. We've had our trillions. What Guyana is about to experience, we've had. And we've pissed it away. We've allowed people to steal it. Politicians took bribes, lived better lives than they could have built based on their knowledge, their ability, their capacity. They stole money. They were part of a massive criminal enterprise in this country with big business, lawyers, chambers of commerce, people in public service. There was a massive robbery, organized crime, criminal in Trinidad and Tobago. When you hear them talking about people stealing land, that is not bandits with a crocus bag. That's degrees. That requires lawyers and accountants and people in the public service to fraudulently steal people's land. We've created enterprise of criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. There is a wife of a member of parliament tonight who is the general manager of a construction company that is benefiting from billions of dollars in Trinidad and Tobago. And there is no oversight. There is nobody to report them to. There is a camera pole standing in a public park that is part of the National Trust that a private citizen thought he had the authority to put up and put cameras to protect his house and to dig up the park and to dig up the road and to dig up the sidewalks to run his wires. Because he could get away with it. Because he had the right connections. And if Philip Alexander talk about it, he have the right lawyers to shut him up. Because that's Trinidad and Tobago. You don't know what's wrong with Trinidad and Tobago until people like me take massive risk and go out there and expose it. And the police service should have gone and taken down that camera pole the way they went in the hotspot and took down the cameras. They should have done that then. And they should have charged him. That's trespass. And if he has authority from any horticultural division or any minister of agriculture, they have to justify it. Because I want to tell you, if he could do that, you could go and open a shop in the savannah. And if they come to move you, take them before the Equal Opportunity Tribunal. This country is run insane in the parliament, in the cabinet, in the government. The PNM-UNC exchange, the spy versus spy game they're talking now. This is to distract you with foolishness. Did you not think they were spying on you? I knew from the moment I stepped out. We are in danger. From the moment you stand up and speak out against the criminals in this country, you think the criminals, those little sneaker thieves and corned beef thieves that amalgamated moving between jail and court, the criminals in this country stole $3 trillion. We spend more money transporting those prisoners than those prisoners stole. Now, if that is not a joke, what is? We spend more money housing them per month, $25,000 per person. They didn't steal $25,000. Cut your losses. That is literally throwing good money after bad. You're locking up a man that thief $500, and you're going to spend $25,000 per month to house him for the next 10 years and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars moving him from jail to court and pay public defender lawyers and state prosecutors. Cut your losses. We live in a country where there are more people in jail in Trinidad and Tobago for crimes they did, for crimes they're not convicted of, than there are people actually convicted. We have a director of public prosecutions, a president, a chief justice, all with the power to end that tonight. Our jails are crammed with people convicted of nothing, whose crime is poverty. So they can't afford bail, they can't afford a lawyer, so they're stuck. And they're stuck for years. And by our silence, we incarcerate them. By our silence, we torture them. The world went to war for less of a human rights atrocity than we do to people in Trinidad and Tobago. And all of us should be collectively ashamed. So when we see it flood, don't look to stick your finger in your brother eye or your sister eye or your neighbor eye. Ask the Prime Minister, what are you doing about this? And if littering is the problem, where are the litter wardens? Where are the litter laws? When you need laws to benefit you, you write those laws. So why aren't you writing laws that benefits the whole country? We could capture all the water, we could hold it, we could treat it, we could distribute it, and Trinidad will never have a water problem again. There will not be a bottled water company in this country. All of the tanks and pump companies have to change and diversify into something else. There will be no more trucks delivering water in this country because everybody would have pipe-borne water, a proper supply. We could do that. That is a simple thing to do. When they tell you the foolishness about the water leaking as it leaks is the problem, that is nonsense. That is as much nonsense as the garbage that's floating on the water causing the floods. They are lying to you. Your Prime Minister is paid to lie to the nation. And that has to stop. We need to get to a place where we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, elect people to office, not who you like, but who could work. And make sure those people working their tails off so that your country is better. When we talk about it, the Commissioner of Police stunting all over Rich Plain, we declaring war, they declaring war. Miss me with that. How we still have 40,000 illegal guns in this country? You know which doors to kick and which mosques to invade when the police get killed? And up to now, you can't tell us what gun shoot that bullet. We don't have a forensic center that could tell you that. But Gary Griffith, former Commissioner of Police, tells us that every single legal firearm, which I assume includes the Ministry of National Security and Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, must be checked, fired, and lodged in the forensic center. So we can't know yet, but we're talking and stunting. Everything in Trinidad and Tobago is a game, a gimmick, a stunt, a foolishness. You listen to the level of knowledge of fellows like Professor Watson and Dr. Botiwari, fellows who have to sell their souls politically to try and get an end to deliver their potential to hopefully make a better country. You hear Professor Watson, the knowledge he has is not being put to use for this country. We have a contractor running our economy. Ran it into the ground. It fall down like some of the walls he built. And he's still there, sneering at the people in Trinidad and Tobago. That's our reality. That capacity and ability and brightness are thrown aside for political correctness and connectedness. Every time there is a Shouter Baptist Day, I think of Archbishop Barbara Burke, who had to sell her soul politically just to free her people. And I watching these politicians trying to outdo each other to take credit. Barbara Burke is the only one who deserves credit because she figured out the system and she worked the system to the benefit of the Shouter Baptist. And she is somebody that I respect. We have charlatans in our parliament. The 41 people in our parliament, including the Speaker of the House, should be fired tonight. Trinidad and Tobago is failing because of incompetence at that level. We could dominate the Western world in shipping, ship turnaround, shipping services. We could establish 15, hear me here, 15 cruise ship ports throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and they could be docking here in as little as 6 months. We don't because they don't want to, or they can't find a way to steal it. And I want to tell Trinidad and Tobago as I close, everything that is wrong in this country, because I've gotten you to agree that nothing works. I want to explain to you why. Nothing works because the solutions allows them to steal money. So for as long as the courts don't work, the solutions allow somebody to steal money. Police service, justice system, public service, WASA, everything that doesn't work creates industry of stolen money. Trinidad and Tobago, our entire budget is impregnated with stolen, wrongfully spent and corrupt money. The people of Trinidad and Tobago, 1.4 million of us, are set apart, set upon each other, arguing, fighting with each other, talking skin color, hair texture, foolishness, talking about who littering and who working and who don't work hard, who drinking. Forget all that nonsense. You do what you want to do, as Patrice say, drink your water and mind your business. But make sure the government minding your business too, and not just spying, that they're actually doing the job. That's what we need. We need to hear the leader of the opposition and the prime minister talking about the fact that you just cost parents money that they did not have to send children back to school for the last 2 months of a school year, just so that you could spike COVID, so that you could sell your jobs. This is criminal enterprise at the level of government. We need to vote into office people who are not connected to these contract mafia members, who have demonstrated not only the ability to fix it, but real integrity, not interested in money from these white-collar crooks. We need a better Trinidad and Tobago. Every single day that goes by, every single day that we sit down waiting to see what this one will do and what that one will do, our lives get harder. They tell you tonight, and they worked it out for you dollar by dollar, how your life is going to get worse with the removal of this subsidy that created a fake economy that they fooled you with, that they dangle shiny objects and bubbles in front of your eyes to make you feel life is good in Trinidad and Tobago. We even subsidize the gas. That subsidy was a distraction so they could have stolen that $3 trillion. And now that they don't need that distraction, they come back for your subsidy. Our country is broken by deliberate design. And the people responsible for breaking it reside in organizations like the PNM and the UNC. And we need to accept that. We need to stop being racial fools. We need to stop being divided as a nation. We need to wrap ourselves collectively in that red, white, and black flag and insist on every single person in the public service, especially those who hold high office in the parliament and the government, do their jobs or fire them. And until we could get to that place, all that we talk works against us. I want to say thank you again to everybody, to the guests tonight, Professor Watson, Dr. Bo Tiwari, to our chairman, Felicia Holder, to Satish, and to David for the wonderful work they did, to Precious, who coordinates the graphics, among other things, to Indira and the rest of the staff who work behind the scenes to make it happen. Thank all of you very much. Thank all of the viewers. Until next time, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.
The sun rises slowly over the hills. Everywhere is gold and sunlight, but still most nights with hotels are crowded. There are days where dark clouds are shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only volunteers get the fill. Empty promises is what they hear. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday he'll hear their whispered prayer. Covered break to look out the window to hear voices from the ghetto.